Imagine a machine so pure in purpose it feels almost dangerous, light as a whisper yet explosive as thunder. Stripped of comfort, coated in purpose, and engineered not for convenience but for communion with speed itself. Picture the smell of resin and gasoline mingling in the air, the sound of twin turbines spooling up before unleashing a fury that feels alive, unpredictable, almost sentient. This was not a car for the cautious. It was built for those who sought to wrestle physics and win, one heartbeat at a time. Decades later, its silhouette still sparks awe, its name still commands silence, and its spirit still challenges every safe, sanitized evolution that followed. Beneath the red paint lies the final word of a founder who refused to let his dream be diluted. A farewell and a warning disguised as a supercar. Stick around because we're about to dive into the story of how one icon came to define an entire generation of performance, passion, and rebellion. Like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which legend you want to see next. The Ferrari F40 began as more than just another model. It was Enzo Ferrari's unfiltered declaration that emotion still belonged in the age of computation and corporate restraint. By the mid-1980s, Ferrari was a company under pressure. New emissions laws, new materials, new expectations, and the founder, nearing the end of his life, wanted one last car that captured everything he believed in. The Ferrari F40 emerged from that moment. Raw carbon fiber, Kevlar, and aluminum joined together in a form that looked like it had been carved by airflow itself. It was intended not for comfort or luxury, but for sensation. Every panel, vent, and scoop existed to serve speed. The interior was a shock for anyone expecting opulence. Bare floors, exposed bolts, thin door cards. Every ounce that didn't make it faster was left on the factory floor. Even the windows were plastic. Enzo's reasoning was simple. A car's soul is found in how it drives, not how it pampers. The Ferrari F40's twin-turbocharged 2.9-liter V8 was both masterpiece and menace. It produced 471 horsepower, numbers that may sound modest today, but in a chassis weighing barely over 2,400 pounds, it was intoxicating. Turbos in the 1980s were brutal. Boost came like a hammer after a lull, slingshotting the car forward with no digital nanny to catch you. Every gear change demanded attention. Miss your rhythm and the car punished you. Nail it, and it rewarded you with a symphony of intake, whoosh, and wastegate chatter that felt almost mechanical in its honesty. This wasn't performance for numbers, it was performance for nerve. Ferrari designed the F40's body with deep consultation from Pininfarina, but even that collaboration was stripped of vanity. The massive rear wing, the wedge nose, the cutout plexiglass, all of it owed more to necessity than fashion. It was the first Ferrari to fully embrace composite materials for mass production, a decision that made it a pioneer among road cars. Engineers chased stiffness and lightness with the zeal of aerospace designers. You could sense that every gram had been argued over. Every decision filtered through the mantra of function over flourish. Even the paint was applied thin to save weight. Inside the factory, workers said the F40 felt different to assemble. It wasn't a project meant to please marketing executives. It was a car to satisfy one man's belief that speed was art. Ferrari himself insisted on manual everything. No power steering, no traction control. No anti-lock brakes because he believed drivers should feel every vibration, every tremor. The clutch was heavy, the steering pure, and the turbo lag immense. But together they formed a conversation between man and machine that modern cars rarely allow. Owning a Ferrari F40 in the late 80s was unlike owning any other supercar. It cost roughly $400,000, astronomical at the time, and was nearly impossible to acquire unless you were already a known Ferrari client. Those who did manage to get one faced something almost contradictory, a car that looked wild yet was surprisingly straightforward to maintain by exotic standards. The mechanical simplicity of the F40's engine and layout meant it could be serviced by skilled mechanics without the need for computers. Still, every drive carried risk. The combination of turbo lag, short wheelbase, and brutal acceleration demanded respect. Many owners learned that the car's limits weren't just high, they were personal. What made the Ferrari F40 so special wasn't only its engineering, but the culture it reflected. It was born in a decade obsessed with excess, yet it delivered its thrill through purity rather than opulence. Where competitors added electronics and luxury, Ferrari subtracted. Where others chased refinement, Ferrari chased response. It became a kind of manifesto, proof that emotion could be engineered, that fear could coexist with fascination. The result was a car that terrified journalists and mesmerized fans, cementing Ferrari's image as the keeper of driving's raw truth. But even at launch, there was tension. Critics argued that the F40 was too extreme for public roads, too crude for a $400,000 car, too old school in its refusal to evolve. They weren't wrong, but they missed the point. Enzo Ferrari didn't build the F40 for comfort. He built it to outlast compromise. Every imperfection reinforced its personality. Every quirk reminded you this was the last Ferrari personally signed off by the founder himself. That connection between man, mission, and machine became part of its DNA. Collectors today still talk about how early F40s varied subtly from one another. The panels were hand-fitted, the weave of the carbon fiber sometimes visible under thin paint. It was craftsmanship in the old-world sense, imperfect but human. Step inside and the cabin smelled like glue and resin. No infotainment, no carpet, no distractions, just a tachometer front and center, red line at 7,700 RPM, daring you to touch it. Driving the Ferrari F40 wasn't easy, and that was exactly the point. The turbo surge hit hard around 4,000 RPM, pushing the rear tires to the edge of traction. You had to think ahead, anticipate, and commit. Few cars since have demanded such engagement. On a mountain road or track, it didn't just reward skill, it demanded bravery. It taught humility faster than any driving school could. By 1988, production ramped up to meet unexpected demand. What was supposed to be a limited run of 400 units stretched to over 1,300, fueled by global fascination. Ferrari purists saw it as the last true analog supercar, a machine built before electronics dulled the edges of speed. Even the factory test drivers spoke of it with reverence and fear. In their words, the car felt alive, always watching, always ready to bite if disrespected. In every sense, the Ferrari F40 represented a crossroads. It stood between eras, the old world of mechanical purity and the new world of digital control. Its creation wasn't just an act of engineering, it was an act of defiance. That's why, decades later, it still feels timeless. The car itself was fast, yes, but its real power was symbolic. It told the world that passion could still beat protocol. That danger could still define desire. And that's where its story truly starts to heat up. Because once the F40 hit the open market, it didn't just redefine what a supercar could be, it reshaped how the world saw Ferrari itself. Next, we'll explore how this unruly masterpiece shook the industry, dominated imaginations, and became a benchmark that rivals still measure against. When the Ferrari F40 hit the streets, it became an instant sensation. A red apparition that seemed almost alien among the polished exotics of its era. Unlike its rivals, which flaunted luxury and gadgetry, the Ferrari F40 was unapologetically brutal. Its presence at car shows and in magazines electrified audiences. It looked like a race car with license plates, and that was exactly what it was meant to be. The public's fascination turned into frenzy, and the car's reputation quickly crossed from engineering marvel to cultural phenomenon. This was no longer just a supercar. It was a symbol of rebellion against everything that made modern performance predictable. In the US, the Ferrari F40 arrived amid a financial boom and a hunger for symbols of success. Dealers were inundated with offers well above sticker price, and speculators treated allocations like stocks. Owning one meant more than driving. It meant having a piece of history. The car's performance numbers, though impressive, didn't fully explain its magnetism. A 0-60 time of around 4 seconds and a top speed surpassing 200 mph made headlines. But the way it delivered that power, the way it demanded total focus, was what made it legendary. You couldn't drive the Ferrari F40 halfway. It asked for commitment, both financially and physically. Reviewers at the time often described fear and respect in the same breath. The Ferrari F40 didn't coddle, didn't flatter, didn't care about your ego. Where others used suspension trickery and computers to hide flaws, the F40 exposed everything: your inputs, your reflexes, your nerve. That honesty resonated with enthusiasts who felt that driving was becoming too insulated. Suddenly, this stripped-down monster was the poster child of authenticity, a rolling manifesto for analog emotion in a digital age. Ferrari's approach to the F40 also flipped conventional marketing on its head. The company never intended to chase volume or luxury trends. Instead, it leaned into exclusivity. The F40's production run grew only because of overwhelming demand, not strategy. The car's price soared, and gray market trading turned it into a commodity. a financial instrument wrapped in carbon fiber. Some buyers never drove theirs at all, storing them as investments. Others, the true believers, treated it as a rite of passage. For them, the Ferrari F40 wasn't about ownership, it was about survival. Rivals watched closely. Manufacturers across Europe and Japan studied the F40's formula, its focus on lightweight construction, its unapologetic minimalism, and began to adapt elements of it. Yet no one managed to replicate its chemistry. Some tried to tame turbo power with technology. Others pursued higher top speeds. But what they couldn't duplicate was the Ferrari F40's balance of danger and devotion, that razor's edge between brilliance and disaster. That edge gave it a mystique that technology could never reproduce. Motorsport inevitably called. Although Ferrari never designed the F40 as a pure race car, private teams couldn't resist pushing it to the limit. Modified versions like the F40 LM and F40 Competizione appeared at endurance races, showing that the car's foundation was far more capable than anyone expected. In stripped racing trim, the Ferrari F40 became even more feral, louder, lighter, faster. While it didn't dominate its class, it captured hearts by embodying what racing was supposed to be: dangerous, emotional, and unfiltered. Even spectators who never owned one recognized it as the last link between Ferrari's racing soul and its road cars. In the American market, the Ferrari F40's arrival carried extra drama. Regulations forced Ferrari to make subtle adaptations for emissions and safety, but the core experience remained untamed. Cars entered through official channels and the gray market, each commanding outrageous premiums. In an era when Wall Street excess defined the decade, the F40 became the four-wheeled avatar of risk and reward. It was the dream car of people who thrived on volatility, the perfect icon for the late 1980s. But time has a way of testing myths. As the 1990s began, a new wave of supercars emerged, armed with electronics, carbon monocoques, and advanced aerodynamics. They were faster, more efficient, and more forgiving. Yet something about them felt clinical. Against this backdrop, the Ferrari F40's roughness aged into charm. Its lack of digital safety nets became a badge of authenticity. Enthusiasts began to realize that this wasn't just a fast car, it was the end of an era. When Enzo Ferrari passed away in 1988, the F40 instantly transformed from product to monument. The Ferrari F40's fame extended far beyond the automotive press. It became a fixture in pop culture, appearing in video games, posters, and music videos. For a generation of kids, it wasn't just the ultimate Ferrari, it was the ultimate dream. Its image plastered on bedroom walls and arcade screens created emotional connections that persisted long after newer, faster cars appeared. Even people who had never driven one could recite its specs from memory. Despite its exalted status, the F40 was not invincible. Its lack of driver aids meant that mistakes could be catastrophic. Owners who underestimated it often paid the price. Insurance companies learned quickly to brace for claims, and yet even this danger enhanced its mystique. The Ferrari F40 didn't pretend to be safe or forgiving. It was honest about its risks. That honesty, in a world increasingly softened by technology, became part of its enduring appeal. Over the years, the F40's legend grew in the tuning and collector communities. Some enthusiasts modified their cars with modern tires, upgraded turbos, or suspension tweaks, while purists insisted that any deviation ruined its essence. The debate itself reflected how deeply the Ferrari F40 had embedded itself into car culture. It wasn't just another collectible, it was an artifact of ideology. By the mid-2000s, the Ferrari F40's value skyrocketed, but its reputation as a driver's car never faded. Those lucky enough to experience one firsthand often describe the same sensation: fear giving way to euphoria, chaos turning into control. That emotional arc is what keeps it relevant. No amount of technology has been able to replicate the raw feedback loop between driver and machine that the F40 provides. What's fascinating is how the Ferrari F40 continues to shape modern automotive philosophy. Even as Ferrari and others produce hypercars with hybrid systems and advanced aerodynamics, engineers still reference the F40's ethos, lightness, purity, connection, as their guiding principles. It remains the benchmark for emotional performance, the yardstick against which passion is measured. In motorsport, in pop culture, and in memory, the Ferrari F40's shadow looms large. It was more than the sum of its horsepower or lap times. It was the heartbeat of an era that valued courage over control. And yet, the deeper question remains. Why, decades later, does this car still feel unmatched? That answer lies in its legacy, the way it continues to challenge every modern supercar to prove its soul. That's where our story turns next. The Ferrari F40 endures because it captures something that technology can't replicate, a direct, visceral connection between human and machine. As the years rolled forward, the automotive world became more sophisticated, more computer-driven, more insulated from risk. Yet every innovation seemed to make the Ferrari F40 shine brighter in contrast. Built from 1987 to 1992, it was never meant to be timeless, but time has revealed its genius. The Ferrari F40 wasn't simply fast. It was philosophical, a rejection of everything that made driving easier, and therefore, in Enzo's eyes, less meaningful. By the late 1990s, the car had already ascended into legend. Owners who once treated it as a weekend toy began to realize they were holding a piece of irreplaceable history. Ferrari's later supercars, sleeker, quicker, more advanced, couldn't capture the same emotion. Even the company's most celebrated successors, while faster by the numbers, lacked that raw simplicity. The Ferrari F40 represented the last unfiltered handshake between the driver's senses and the road beneath them. There was no buffer, no translation layer, just noise, vibration, and consequence. Collectors often describe the first drive as an awakening. The car idles rough, almost impatient, the pedals heavy, the steering weighty even at low speeds. The twin turbos spool reluctantly before exploding into life, hurling the car forward with sudden violence. Every sense floods with input. The smell of hot metal, the whine of gears, the hiss of boost. There's no hiding behind automation. You feel alive because the Ferrari F40 makes you earn every inch of motion. It's mechanical intimacy at its most demanding and its most rewarding. In modern terms, it's almost absurd. There are family sedans now that can outrun it on paper, hypercars that outcorner it with ease. But no modern car, regardless of cost, has been able to recreate the Ferrari F40's balance of purity and peril. It wasn't designed to impress investors or tick performance metrics. It was designed to test courage. That's why enthusiasts still talk about it as if it's alive, because in many ways it behaves like a living thing. It has moods, it has temper, it reacts to your confidence or hesitation. The F40 doesn't flatter, it challenges. Over time, that challenge has turned into reverence. Every modern supercar release is measured against its ghost. Lightweight construction. The Ferrari F40 did it first with composites. Aerodynamic purity. The F40's body was shaped entirely by airflow. Emotional connection. The F40 is the benchmark. Even in Ferrari's own lineage, the DNA is unmistakable. The F50 Enzo and LaFerrari each attempted to carry the torch, but none could replicate the founder's final word. The F40 wasn't about evolution. It was about essence. Its influence extends beyond performance cars. The philosophy behind the Ferrari F40, this idea that simplicity breeds soul, has seeped into design, art, and culture. For enthusiasts, it's a reminder that perfection isn't about removing flaws. It's about amplifying character. You don't love an F40 despite its imperfections. You love it because of them. The heavy clutch, the delayed throttle, the heat-soaked cabin, all of it conspires to create experience, not convenience. It's proof that emotion is worth more than precision. The market reflects this emotional weight. Values for the Ferrari F40 have soared not only because of rarity, but because of resonance. Collectors don't see it as an investment vehicle. They see it as a relic of purity in a diluted world. Cars that once sold for hundreds of thousands now command several $1 million, and yet the owners who drive them understand that mileage doesn't destroy value, it enhances it. An F40 sitting silent in a collection is like a Stradivarius locked in a glass case, technically preserved, spiritually wasted. But what makes the Ferrari F40 truly eternal isn't just its design or performance, it's its honesty. It represents a moment when Ferrari refused to compromise, when engineering served emotion instead of efficiency. That honesty resonates in an age when everything feels curated and optimized. When you see an F40 in motion today, its form still looks futuristic, its sound still raw, its attitude still defiant. It's not nostalgia, it's relevance. Modern drivers who experience the Ferrari F40 for the first time often walk away stunned. They expect a museum piece, but what they find is immediacy. No delay, no insulation. Every bump and surge transmits through your body. It's exhausting and exhilarating all at once. And yet, despite the fear it can inspire, there's joy in that struggle. The car teaches something profound. Mastery means vulnerability. You must surrender control before you earn it back. In a sense, the Ferrari F40's true legacy lies in what it tells us about ourselves. It reminds us that progress isn't always improvement, that sometimes the path forward begins with remembering what mattered most. It's the kind of machine that strips away ego and leaves only instinct. In the hierarchy of Ferrari legends, it's the one that feels least like a product and most like a confession of love for driving, danger, and defiance. Every time a modern supercar debuts, the question resurfaces. Could anyone build another F40 today? Realistically, no. Regulations, safety standards, and consumer expectations would never allow it. That impossibility is what keeps the myth alive. The Ferrari F40 stands outside time, a reminder that passion and risk can coexist, and that true beauty is rarely comfortable. For enthusiasts, it's more than nostalgia. It's a touchstone, a North Star. When they look at an F40, they see what happens when purpose outweighs polish. They see a car built by conviction, not consensus. And for all its fame and fortune, its essence remains humble. A driver's car, built for those who want to feel everything. That's why, even decades later, the Ferrari F40 doesn't fade. It reigns. And in its reign lies the answer to our original question. It mattered because it dared to be fearless. It lasted because it was never meant to please everyone. And it remains supreme because no one else has had the courage to build its equal. Next, we'll close by looking at what that means for enthusiasts today. How the Ferrari F40 continues to shape ownership, value, and meaning in the modern era. Today, the Ferrari F40 exists at the intersection of legend and reality. A supercar from 1987 to 1992 that still defines what purity feels like in an age of digital performance. For US enthusiasts, it represents both an attainable dream for the few and a benchmark for the many. The Ferrari F40 is now an artifact of intent, a tangible reminder of when Ferrari built machines to serve passion instead of algorithms. It remains the only car that feels equally at home in a museum and on a mountain road, though few owners are brave enough to test the latter. Owning one in America is an exercise in reverence. Importation and compliance hurdles have long been resolved, but maintenance remains a high-stakes ritual. The Ferrari F40's turbos demand careful attention, its cooling system rewards precision, and its carbon Kevlar body panels require delicate handling. Replacement parts are rare and often bespoke, sourced from specialists who understand the materials of an era when carbon fiber was still experimental. Yet owners describe the experience not as a burden but as a privilege, a relationship that feels more like stewardship than possession. Values fluctuate, but consistently orbit the multi-million-dollar range. Condition, provenance, and originality define worth. Cars with documented histories or early European spec often command a premium, while those modified in the 1990s for racing or style purposes now find new appreciation as artifacts of enthusiasm. Insurance is costly, maintenance intensive, and every drive carries risk, but that risk is the point. When you strap into a Ferrari F40, you don't just start a car, you ignite a dialogue with history. For American drivers who want to feel a fraction of that connection, the lesson the Ferrari F40 teaches is timeless. Seek engagement over ease. Modern performance cars have grown faster and safer, but few deliver the same goosebumps that come from imperfection and feedback. The F40's legacy endures because it makes you confront what driving really means. It strips away comfort and asks, do you still love the challenge? That question echoes through every sports car that tries to claim purity today. The Ferrari F40's continued relevance isn't just about nostalgia, it's about perspective. It reminds us that progress is only valuable when it preserves emotion. In an era of electric instant torque and autonomous assistance, this 1980s supercar still feels like rebellion made tangible. Its bodywork still breathtaking, its stance still predatory, its purpose still uncompromising. Each surviving example is a beating heart of analog glory that whispers to those who listen closely enough. This is what it means to drive. And that's the enduring power of the Ferrari F40. From 1987 to 1992, it captured the last gasp of an untamed age, distilled it into carbon and fire, and gave it wheels. It remains Ferrari's most honest car, not because it's perfect, but because it never pretended to be. The world has changed, but the F40 hasn't, and maybe that's why it still reigns supreme. The car that once terrified its drivers now comforts them, not through ease, but through truth. The Ferrari F40 will always stand as the line that modern performance cannot cross, the point where courage and engineering met and refused to compromise. If you ever get the chance to see one, to hear one, or if you're impossibly lucky to drive one, remember this. It's not just a car, it's a promise kept. The promise that passion, real, unfiltered, human passion, will always be faster than fear.